Chapter 10, Workplace Legalities. Learning Outcomes. Identify federal laws regarding hiring and firing, discrimination, and other workplace regulations. Describe the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's top workplace priorities. Examine the role of healthcare practitioners in following OSHA, the CDC, and the CLIA standards for workplace safety. We are also going to summarize the purpose of workers' compensation laws and unemployment insurance, and determine the appropriate legal process for hiring employees and maintaining the required paperwork while the person is employed. Here are the important key terms for Chapter 10. Employment at will. So it's a concept of employment where either the employer or the employee can end the employment at any time for any reason. So Kentucky is an employment at will state, and it just means that as an employee, you can quit at any time, you don't need any notice, and neither does the employer. As far as firing, there are other states, however, where there has to be documentation in order for someone to be fired, and that would lead into wrongful discharge at that point. Factors affecting employment at will would be federal and state laws, executive orders from the president, and case laws. Contracts between a worker and an employer, bargaining agreements between companies and unions, and rules for government workers, such as military. Hiring and firing. So wrongful discharge can occur in a place that does not have employment at will. So if they do not have a legal reason for firing the person, then the person could turn around and sue the company for it. As far as wrongful discharge. So public policy is the common law concept of wrongful discharge when an employee has acted for the common good. Protection from discrimination. So there are many laws that serve to protect people from being discriminated against on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, being sexual orientation, age, ability or lack thereof, genetics, pregnancy, being in a union, or engaging in political activity. Conditions for sexual harassment. So basically, a person does not want to be touched or have certain things said to them that is of a sexual nature. It could be something that's explicit and spelled out and vulgar, or it could be something that is implied, sort of the person suggesting something sexual. So that is not okay, and nobody should be made to work in an environment that is intimidating, hostile, or offensive. Federal labor and employment laws. So there are employment discrimination laws, and the Wagner Act makes it illegal to discriminate against somebody for joining a union. The Civil Rights Act was in 1964, and they had affirmative action, and that was just to make sure that there were enough people of color or women that were added to major companies in positions of power. Age discrimination is what it sounds like, of 1967. We have the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and that was to help people recover from injuries at work. And then there was the Discrimination Act against Pregnancy. Then we have Titles 1 and 5 of the ADA, so Americans with Disabilities Act, and is what it sounds like. We have the Civil Rights Act of 1991. And we have GINA of 2008, the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, and that is to prevent anybody from losing their job due to genetic issue. And then we have the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act of 2009, and that is to allow women to be paid the same amount as men. And if they're not, then they can sue. Wage and hour laws. So we have the Social Security Act of 1935. It's what it sounds like as far as offering people Social Security and to pay into it. We have the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938, and that was to help children not have to work and for people not to work crazy hours and then to not become injured at work. As far as they receive protections as far as being injured at work. We have the Equal Pay Act of 1963. And then we have the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974 to give employees access to retirement income and hopefully for jobs to contribute to those. Workplace safety laws. So there's OSHA, and that is to protect the health of the people at work. You have a right to know which chemicals you're working with. You have a right to know how to protect yourself from certain chemicals or diseases. So you also have to follow the CDC's regulations and stipulations for the procedures to make sure you're safe at work, and then also how to protect yourself. And then it also tells you about certain hazardous chemicals you could work with and the signs that are on the bottles as far as labels to know what you're working with. And then we have FMLA, which is the Family Medical Leave Act, and that is to protect your job if you have to leave work for health reasons, or if someone in your family that you're providing for, if you have to take off work to take care of them. Also, this is unpaid for a while, but when the pay does kick in, it's at a percentage, but at least you're not getting $0. So OSHA is basically enforcing the standards for health and safety in the workplace, and some of you will become OSHA certified depending on your degree programs. As part of OSHA, there are workplace inspections. So imminent danger situations is a dangerous situation where there's death and danger that is about to happen. Fatalities and accidents resulting in death or hospitalization needs to be inspected. Formal employee complaints, program inspections as far as checking elevators and making sure establishments don't have any pests or rodents, and then follow-up inspections. As a healthcare worker or any worker, you are covered by right to know laws, and you have the right to know which substances you're working with. You want to protect yourself, you want to protect your family, you want to know how to dispose of these chemicals and these hazards to yourself. Also, you have a right to know the employer duties and then your rights as an employee and other health and safety issues that might come up. OSHA health standards. So you have a hazard communication standard, and you have the written hazard communication program, and then you have the material safety data sheets that basically tell you about the materials that you're working with, and they should be kept on file, and you should be easily able to view them to know exactly what to do with these hazards. So the general duty clause basically says that you have a right to know what type of equipment you're working with, and if that equipment is hazardous to your health. So it must be labeled as a hazard so you know ahead of time. The chemical hygiene plan deals with how you handle those hazards and how do you protect yourself. The ionizing radiation standard basically deals with requirements for those that are dealing with x-rays and machines that could cause radiation and ionization. Also, you have a right to know the exit route standard, so how do you leave a building if there were danger, and then the electrical standard as far as dealing with hazardous locations and the electrical equipment. So you have to know how to use those, and then which ones are flammable, and then how to protect yourself. The Medical Waste Tracking Act is part of OSHA, and basically we want to make sure that we are getting rid of medical waste in a proper way. If facilities are violating this, then they will be fined, and they could be shut down depending how bad it is. But all materials that are hazardous must be disposed of in a safe and healthy manner. The CDC has guidelines for you to follow, so to wear gloves, eye masks, gowns, and other protective equipment when performing tasks such as capillary puncture, phlebotomy, pelvic exams, minor suturing, and a throat culture. Also wear protective equipment when performing tasks that do not involve direct contact with blood, body fluids, tissue, or if you have an accidental case of being exposed to any of these things, like maybe from a sharps container. The Clinical Laboratory Improvement Act was passed in 1988, and it basically established minimum standards federally, so for all the states to follow when it comes to laboratory testing. So laboratories must obtain a certification. People have to pay fees. They have to follow regulations concerning testing, personnel, inspections, test management, quality control, and quality assurance. Workers' compensation, so that's when someone is injured on the job, they have a right to medical treatment, temporary disability through their job, permanent disability if it's something that makes them have to change their profession or if they can no longer work. Some survivors have death benefits that's given to the family members, and there are also rehab benefits as far as trying to get better and rehabilitate yourself. Filing for unemployment benefits. So in order to file a claim, a person needs their social security card, the W-2 statements for the past 1 to 2 years, wage records for the past 18 months, the employer's information, the reason why they left the job, and the employer's unemployment insurance account number if it's available. Interviewing guidelines. So make a list of questions for the job. It's good to look up the job description online. It's good to look up the company to know what their mission statement is. Do not rush during your interview, but also don't just keep talking and drag it along. Remain objective, so stick to the facts and make sure you listen well. Remain professional in the interview on a positive note, and then inform the candidate of the decision. Surety bond. So it's a type of insurance for employers if somebody were to steal money from the job. So as far as embezzlement or taking business funds, but basically the job would still have access to the money through the surety bond since it's insurance. Background checks. So financial and criminal backgrounds may be checked by the employer. Prospective or current employees must acknowledge that the check is to occur. Employment paperwork. So an employee records must include social security number, number of exemptions claimed as far as taxes, gross salary, I-9 form, deductions for Social Security, Medicare, and federal, state, and city taxes, and other withholdings. Information on the W-2 will be the employer's tax ID number, the employee's Social Security number, taxable earnings paid by the employer, amounts deducted for income tax and Social Security, and an amount of advance earned income credit payment if there are any.